Hello, everyone. I am Dr. McKenzie. I am the Accessibility Coordinator and Veteran Services Coordinator at the Southern Campus of Ohio. I am going to introduce you to the moderator for today's session, Mr. Robert Pleasant, and turn it over to him.
All right, thank you, Dr. McKenzie. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 2 on day 1 of the Envision Access Conference, Maneuvering the Road to Transition Using the IEP as GPS. As Dr. McKenzie said, I'm Robert Pleasant. I'm the Associate Director of our Student Resource Commons here on the Ohio University Southern campus, and I will be moderating this afternoon's session. Our presenters for this afternoon are Dr. Charles Kemp. He is an assistant professor at Shawnee State University in Portsmouth, Ohio, teaches in the multi-age intervention specialist and primary special education programs at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Dr. Kemp, having nearly 35 years in education, has served as a classroom teacher and a school administrator in U.S. schools and abroad. His presentations at national and state conferences have always included an inclusive education perspective, often addressing topics like co-teaching at the university level, serving low incidence disabilities in general education classroom, and supporting students with disabilities in university classrooms through better transition planning. His current research continues to explore how to model co-teaching in university teacher prep programs and ways to understand the effectiveness of dual licensure programs when preparing pre-service teachers for today's classrooms. Dr. Kimberly D. Cassidy is an assistant professor and director of primary education and primary intervention specialist blended programs. She is also the director of the School of Education graduate programs at Shawnee State University. Dr. Cassidy has more than 20 years in elementary education and administration, as well as serving as a developmental specialist for the state of Tennessee. She is internationally recognized for her research on integrating yoga in the classroom for cognitive stimulation and attributional retraining, having presented at Harvard School of Medicine, Movements, Body, Brain, Cognition International Conference and the Cal Poly Tech Ahimsa International Conference in California. Dr. Cassidy was also awarded Shawnee State University's 2018 Outstanding New Faculty Award. And we thank you both for being here. But before we get started, I would like to remind everyone that the chat window is open for this session. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat window. We will pause a few minutes during the session to check the chat for questions. Before this session ends, I will also add a link to the session survey into the chat. Please take a few minutes to complete this evaluation form. Thank you for attending, and at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Kemp and Dr. Cassidy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for attending our session. We put a note there in the chat box. If you would, put your role in the chat box so we kind of know who's in the room. We've all learned to do these things remotely, but we certainly miss being in face-to-face with you. Thankful though for the technology that we can use in this way and accomplish our task today. I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Cassidy.
Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody. I am trying to maneuver this PowerPoint.
You're up. Is it
Charles,
there?
it is, but it's not letting me. Hold on just a minute. Go out of that. Okay, I can see it.
Advance for you.
I'm sorry, you may have to do the advance.
I
I'm
can
gonna move
advance
it
for
to
you.
full screen. I can't see it, but a tiny little box. Okay, here we go. All right, always start out with technology issues. That's the name of the game. That is how we all start out. So I'm so glad I got to do that for you today. All right, so where are we going to go today? I'm going to start out by letting you know we're going to trace the transition journey of a student with his or her parents or guardians. It's always important to include and you know this, the parents are the guardians. We really want to try to use that language. I always make it a habit in my classrooms to say parents, guardians, or families. We don't always get to deal with their parents, and especially in Ohio, because we have such a high rate of opioid abuse. Parents aren't always in the home. So that's incredibly important to make whomever is in the lives of that child or student, make them feel welcome. So when you say parents or guardians or family members, always try to make them feel welcome. We're going to develop a roadmap to the destination that supports and honors the student and family. What we think may be best for that child or family may not be best. And that's important. That's important to note. I know that certainly I would be offended if someone tried to tell me what was best for my child. I think if you come across as someone who is just there to give suggestions and recommendations, that's different. But if you come across as someone who is trying to say, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about, let me tell you what's best for your child, that's a completely different environment, and you're not going to really get anywhere. It's not fair to that family. It's certainly not fair to that student. We want to present the requirements of the transition planning, particularly for students who are heading to college or career tech. We really don't put a lot of emphasis on career tech training like we should. Not everyone is meant to go to college. My brother he's very intelligent. Don't tell him I said that. I promise you, I'll tell you that you're lying. But he was very intelligent, but he was more hands-on. Now, it took him until he was, I think, 50, maybe 49 to finish his college degree because his wife made him go back and finish it. It wasn't that he wasn't intelligent enough to finish it. It was that it just wasn't his thing. He should have gone to career tech and pursued something in that regard. We didn't have those type of, I shouldn't say it this way, but in high school, they really did not manage that very well. We had parents who pushed us to go to college. That was the expectation, and that's what we did. So we really want to make sure that we honor that. It kind of goes back to that other point. If we know that that's not really their forte, going to school, going to college, going that route, nothing wrong with career tech training. And then we want to use a person-centered approach. It's not about the work, it's not about the degree, it's not about it's not about the job, it's about that person. What's going to make them happy? What's going to make them happy throughout their lives? So it's person-centered. Now, there's this poem that Dr. Kemp found. It's incredibly powerful. And I'm not going to read it in its entirety because it's quite long, but there is a link to it that you can get. But it's from the lens of a mother. A mother actually wrote this about her child, and I'm going to read just a couple of pieces from it. And it's called Advice to Professionals Who Must Conference Cases. Janet Fialka. Before the case conference, I looked at my almost 5-year-old son and saw a golden-haired boy who giggled at his baby sister's attempts to clap her hands, who charmed adults by his spontaneous hugs and hellos, who often became a legend in places visited. After the case conference, I looked at my almost 5-year-old son. He seemed to have lost his golden hair. I saw only words plastered on his face, words that drowned us in fear, words like primary expressive speech and language disorder, severe visual motor delay, sensory integration dysfunction, fine and gross motor delay, developmental dyspraxia, and Ritalin now. I want my son back, that's all. I want him back now. Then I'll get on with my life. And so many people walk away from an IEP meeting with those feelings. They come in with the child, they come in with the student, and it doesn't matter what their age is, but they come in with their child and they have a vision for that child. And then all of a sudden, they lose that because they've heard all these words and all these diagnoses, and they wonder what their future is. So today, using these tools and conversations that we're going to have, maybe we can give them back their student, their child, and give them some hope for their future.
So this journey to transition, as I noted, looked in the chat, there's folks who mostly work with older students, even at the college level and university level. So we'll try to keep that in mind as we talk about some things. But this journey to transition, it's challenging, right? What we know is that in IDEA, transition planning must start by age 16. For those of us in Ohio, Governor Kasich a few years ago changed and made transition planning mandatory by age 14. You have to look at 3 areas: post-secondary training and education. That can be anything from adult ed to the finest 4-year university in the country. It can be technical school. It can be even on-the-job training that might be needed to secure the position that the student seeks. And then we have competitive integrated employment, and those 2 beginning words were added recently so that students with disabilities were pushed toward and helped land jobs that were competitive, that equaled their typically developing peer jobs that they would have. And then employment that's integrated into the community, not housed in some workshop or some excluded place that typically developing adults would not be part of. And then thirdly is independent living as appropriate. At 14, it may not be appropriate to begin addressing that, but certainly by 17 or 18, independent living should be part of that discussion. What's that going to look like? And we'll look at that just a little bit. Obviously, as Dr. Cassidy had stated, it needs to be person-centered. It needs to be specific for the student that the team is discussing. By law, the student has to be invited to the IEP meeting whenever transition is being discussed. It does not say the student must attend. It's clear in that they have to be invited. And as a former special ed director, I always pushed my teachers to make sure that the student was there as long as the parent was comfortable with that, because we were talking about the student and they needed to have a voice in that planning. And then 4 other points over on the right-hand side. Courses of study should align with the goals. So the courses they're completing in high school should align with the goals that they have after high school. Now that sounds so matter of fact and like, well, no kidding, Charles, like that just makes sense. But I've seen students who have been enrolled in courses that were not really fitting for them because it was not going to prepare them for their future planning. And they were often in that course because, well, their girlfriend was in that course and they wanted to take that class, or their buddies were in the course. And so we need to have those kind of difficult discussions sometimes as we plan with our students. Annual goals should support student needs and align with the plan. So meeting their academic, behavioral, social, emotional needs, as well as align with the transition plan that we're putting in place. And then the services and activities that we complete with them in high school should prepare them to meet the goals that they have. And then finally, the goals should have what's called a PINS approach. And Dr. Cassidy is going to talk about that in just a moment after she gives you a bit of the reason why do we need good transition plans.
So we always want to look at statistics, but I mean, I'm going to caution you, like I know you already know this, but I'm going to remind you. Statistics are a guideline, something that we go by, not as a hard and fast rule, but certainly to give us some direction. So 2020, the year we all love to hate, they gave us some numbers. I'm not going to say that they are all, you know, incredibly accurate, but I'm going to say that they are a good guideline for us to use. Across all age groups, persons with disabilities were much less likely to be employed than those with no disabilities. The number on that is 20.5% with a disability compared to 67.1% without. I think it's a beautiful thing, however, that we're seeing more and more people with disabilities hired into particularly service jobs like coffee shops, restaurants, those type things. So I'm hoping that that number increases as we move forward. In 2020, we also saw that across all educational attainment groups, unemployment rates for persons with a disability were higher than those for persons without a disability, 19.6 versus 69.4 employed. In 2020, 29% of workers with a disability were employed part-time compared with 16% for those with no disability. I would want to compare that to a different year besides 2020 and also compare that with the number of people with a disability who work full-time compared to part-time. Maybe we don't have that many that work full-time anyway. I mean, I think that there's some questions that I would want to dive into there. And I'm not throwing rocks at you, Charles. You know me, I just ask a lot of questions.
I know.
Employed persons with a disability were more likely to be self-employed than those with no disability. 10.3% compared to persons with no disability at 6.1%. Let me ask you a question. To everyone that's watching, how many people out here listening think that who are the ones that are self-employed? How do you think they became self-employed? What is different in their world that allowed them to be self-employed compared to others without a disability? You might answer in chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. Okay, so you don't want to answer. Fine. All right. Okay, so they likely had resources made available to them. Funding, space, supports. That is certainly true. Let me give you an example. We have a family at our church who has a son that is on the autism spectrum, and they opened. Excuse me, just a moment. They have a son who has autism, and they were able to open a coffee shop for him. And of course they had resources. Of course they had significant resources to open a coffee shop, but it's Adams. Charles, what's the name of the coffee shop? Adams Flying Pig. Flying Pig. And he works every single day. He actually runs that place and people love it, and he is self-employed. That's not going to happen for everybody, of course, but you know, there are scholarships, there are grants they can get, there are small business loans. If they have the support, you know, and resources that they need, they can be self-employed. You can watch, you can pull up videos on YouTube, you can pull up different things that will let you know how other families have done it. And it's quite amazing. The PINs of the student, it stands for preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. Again, this is a student-focused methodology. Preferences, where's the student most comfortable, inside or outside? Working with the hands, working with numbers, working alone, working with people. Adam is definitely a people person, let me tell you. Interests, what does the student enjoy? What do they want to do during their free time? What are their needs? Do they have to have someone supervising them all the time? Can they stay on task? Um, what are their strengths? Let's do a strength inventory. What jobs would align with this person? What do we need to have them learn in school that would give them the skills once they graduate and move on to get a job and keep that job? It's not just getting the job, they have to be able to keep that job, right? So that's what the pins of the student are. I would do this with a check sheet. I would literally sit there and just check things off. What do they need? Fill in the blanks. Um, Certainly, one of the easiest ways to learn um, what the nitty gritty of that student is.
So there's some supports here. Some links will be in the PowerPoint that you'll receive after the presentation. I want to take us to just one of those, just briefly, and hopefully all the technology will work the way it's supposed to. This comes out of Ohio Employment First.
If you're full screen, it might be behind your full screen.
Yeah, it's coming up on my secondary, so I'm going to pull it over. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. Can you see that? No.
No.
Stop share. Now
The Zoom
share
is
my
weird. You have
screen
to-
again. Now you should have it. Is it there?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So I'm not going to look through all of this, but just to give you an idea, question one are outcomes. Where is the youth going? And then it gives you some ideas. What is the team's knowledge about the community's expectation of the selected adult outcomes? And it gives you a chart that you can begin listing some notes about this child or this student. I say child because it could begin as early as 3 years old for some children with disabilities and go all the way through right before the student graduates in high school at up to age 21. What are the youth preferences, interests, needs, and skills, as pins that Kim was speaking of, and what's the right match for this student and those kinds of things. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, I'm going to come back to this. And so those resources are there. I think for those of you that are working in post-secondary education already, oftentimes students bring their IEP and their evaluation team report in Ohio to the university, or at least from the high school, we always encouraged them to do that. And it's those pins that are spelled out in the IEP that I believe would help advising, first gen mentors, any kind of counselors that they would have. It would give them a really good understanding of the student's preferences, interests, needs, and strengths right from, right out the gate, because often we know some of our students are not the self advocates that they need to be. And so it would at least give you some discussion points to start with. So we want to look at three overarching questions. Where is the student presently? And often we talk about this as being the present levels of performance, or the PLOP, in academics, behavior, social skills, and adaptive behavior, or sometimes referred to as daily living. Where's the student going? What are their desires? What are their dreams, their plans? What does the family want for them? And what are some of their goals? Where do they want to be 5 years after they graduate from high school? And then how does the student get there? what accommodations, modifications, training, skill development, coursework, etc., might be needed. And all of that gets treated in high school during that transition plan and the implementation of such, so that those students are prepared then to for life as they leave high school. So we want to look through kind of two lenses today. First, through the lens of a student heading to the Career Technical Center, or if they've already graduated or will be graduating from high school into a career technical college. And we are so fortunate in our area to have both of those types of training facilities available to our students. And then secondly, the lens of students heading to the community college, a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution. And so as we think about going off to the Career Center, there are some resources that are available, and these are available online. They happen to be developed, at least in our area, at the Scioto Career Technical Center, but I just simply Googled them and found them to be able to have access. So if you have a student interested in dental assisting, for instance, one of the programs that's out there at the Career Tech here in Scioto County, what might that look like? And it's going to take a second here. What I want to do is show you, they've listed out the skills necessary for dental assisting, if this is going to work. There it is. Sorry. Act like we've never done this before. Sorry. All right, so what we have is some key career skills, and then there's some soft skills, math skills, and reading skills. And they went through and using somewhat of a Likert scale, this ratings of not essential, slightly essential, essential, and very essential. And you can look down through these different career skills and then begin asking with the student, how do these skills that are needed for being a dental assistant align with some of the skills that you have? And how can we help you get those skills? Particularly looking at the soft skills, right? Those are sometimes difficult to teach. Those are difficult to sometimes even assess, right? But things like, are they dependable? Are they punctual? Do they attend school regularly? Are they able to work independently? Do they have a positive attitude towards work? And you'll notice that all of those soft skills are essential for someone to be a dental assistant. And this type of form, and they have one for every program at the Career Technical Center here in Scioto County. I'm sure they do in other counties as well. This form then can be used to both confirm that the skills are there, help us understand that the skills may not be there yet. We need to help solidify some of those skills. Or it may be a way of saying to the student using this skill sheet, is this really a good fit for you? Considering your reading skills, considering some of your math skills and so forth, even considering some of your soft skills. And so we often have students, girls particularly, but not always young ladies. Let me get back to my original screen. I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm all thumbs today. We often have young ladies that want to go into cosmetology, but there's a lot of biology on the state exam to be a cosmetologist. And they struggle with some of their biology and their science skills. And it's often that skill deficit that keeps them from being successful in a program like cosmetology. And so just knowing that and encouraging students then to really take some of those harder science courses, particularly around biology, to be able to be successful in the career that they want to pursue at the technical center. And you can see that auto body and auto tech, those are there, and building and maintenance, every program that they have. And so based on those essential skills, I think we need to ask some questions with our student and with those of us in post-secondary ed, in PK-12 settings, what courses will the student need to begin in grade 7, particularly because often in grade 7 or 8, some high schools are giving high school credit in order for them to be successful at the career technical or in post-secondary. And go back to one of the slides earlier, one of the things that we talked about, the match of the courses of study that a student takes to be able to align with the goals that they have once they graduate from high school. Looking at this second question here, what soft skills will be necessary? What we know from students with disabilities, particularly, it's the soft skills that get them fired from positions. It's usually not the lack of work skill that they don't have. It's not that they cannot do the work that's being asked of them. They can't get along with their employer and their employees. And so starting as early as we need to help these students understand the soft skills that they're going to be able to need to be successful in life, to get along with others, and actually practicing those and working through some of those things. Again, beginning by age 14 in Ohio, 16 in other states, what accommodations or modifications are currently being provided via the IEP? How can those continue at the CTC? And that's usually a pretty easy transition from the high school to the Career Technical Center. How do they continue to the job site or workplace? Sometimes that transition is a little more difficult. And if those can be provided, then great. But if not, how do we seek to get them provided or help the student compensate in other ways, right? Things like building capacity and grit, perseverance. How do we help them with some of those softer type skills? And then looking, even as we look at post-secondary education at a community college or four-year institution, how can those things be provided? And Dr. Cassidy is going to be speaking about those in just a minute. I want to pause. Are there any questions to this point? What we know is that each student's plan is going to have skills and activities and goals relating to all three of those key areas, but they're going to look different across students. There'll be some similarities because often our students have some of the same type of needs, particularly with those social emotional needs. But being very person-centered and making sure that the students' needs are met individually. So career tech, particularly at the high school level, is usually a pretty easy handoff from the resident high school to the county career technical center. And it's often the transition from high school after graduation into a career technical college that those of us who work in high school levels need to be building that bridge and helping the students maneuver the road, so to speak, to the career tech at the high school, at the post-secondary level. is there a plan in place to address soft skills? And so the plan would be, there needs to be discussion at the IEP team in the high school to address those needs and activities that the student becomes involved in along with their peers to be able to address some of those soft skills. If the student is not attending regularly, we know that not showing up for work will not keep you employed. How do we then strengthen that attendance skill for that student? How do we get them there on time, consistently, every day they should be in school, addressing those needs with the parent and the importance of being at school every day and being on time, since the parents are still the caregivers, and providing that support. Addressing some of those role-playing skills. How do we get along with others when we don't agree, or when something is being asked of us that is not ethical, right? Those kinds of things, because sometimes what we know with our students with disabilities, they don't have the cognitive skills to be able to sort out some of those issues of ethnicity, of ethicalness, and they'll just go ahead and do something that someone asks them to do, and then it gets them in trouble and others as well. And so we were successful when I worked at a high school of doing some role plays, and how should we respond, and why should we respond the way we do. It's part sometimes of the hidden curriculum, what we call the hidden curriculum. It's those things that don't always get taught in a written curriculum. It's the things that don't get taught that are necessary for success in life. And so really addressing those soft skills with our students to prepare them for life is so important. There's some really good resources that you can Google and find about the hidden curriculum, and working through some of those issues of getting along with others, getting along with leaders and bosses, and so forth. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cassidy as we go off to the community or four-year college.
All right, so if you have a student who wants to do community or four-year college, you really need to address what courses the student will need beginning in about grade 7, if you have that program where high school credit is offered. And you can start them with those courses as early as possible. We tend to have more support in K-8 for students with special needs than you do in high school. Because you're so much more, you're expected to be so much more independent in high school. So if we can start them earlier with those high school credits, obviously the earlier the better. So what soft skills would be necessary to go to community or four-year college? Again, just as Dr. Kemp was talking about, you definitely have to have those social skills. We want them to be able to experience different social environments. If they are interested in sports, that's an incredible way to get them to be social, and it doesn't feel like a chore. If they're musical, if they can be in the band, that's a great way to be social. If they like theater, any kind of program, that extracurricular program they can be in, is something that you really want to encourage, because that helps with those social skills. It's definitely important. You can see those skills being transferred into the workplace. Yeah, if you follow a student into the workplace, they have learned so much more with those extracurricular activities than anything else you do than in class. So that's always something that you want to, during that IEP meeting, you want to have that conversation with the family and say, what is it that you think we might be able to get them into? Here are some of the extracurricular things that we offer. What could we get them to do? What when
Sorry,
considering,
changed on you.
Yeah, you did. You did. Are you trying to rush me? I don't know. I'm a little,
It, it falls right into this next slide here.
it does. Um, you also need to know what the entrance requirements are for college or the community college or universities. Now, different universities were trying, it's becoming a universal thing, really. Sometimes they're doing the tests are not required. Shawnee is now doing that. ACT and SAT or other tests are just test recommended because we are trying to open up to a broader base. Um, and part of that is because we've had a drop since COVID, and everyone's struggling to get students. And however we can get them, we want to try to get them in and meet them where they're at. Uh, then, of course, that means we have to be able to offer them bridge courses or any kind of prep courses that would get them ready for, um, the actual university or college level courses. So that might be part of their plan, that they have to take some of those courses to get ready for um, college. Maybe they'll have a year of those prep courses, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. We have very successful graduates who started out taking those courses. We have quite a few, pretty good population that are doing college credit plus courses, and those are a really good. Um, I would want. I don't know what the word is I want to use. College credit plus courses are a really good way to see how those students are going to perform once they get into the university setting or the college setting. Um, we have some that come to campus and take them. We have some that take them inside the school. But if you can get them to come on campus, that's a very good way to see how they're going to maneuver the actual campus, how they're going to respond to people in the classroom, if they're going to be intimidated, if they're going to, socially be successful. It really is a good opportunity to see what's going to happen with that student.
So Kim, I know of a high school that they were able to get their 11th graders who were interested in attending uh, yeah, either community or a four-year university,
Mhm.
community college, and they actually gave them the math and English entrance exam assessments as 11th graders. And for those that were found to have some deficits, they worked with the local university to provide that bridge course at the senior year in high school so that they were able to get the college credit, so to speak, but also the high school credit for that math and that English. And it gave them kind of a one up going into their freshman year. They didn't have to take those bridge courses going in. They were able to go right into, if they were successful as a senior in high school, they were able to go right into freshman English and freshman math, whatever those courses looked like for the university that they were wanting to attend. And I thought that was just a really creative way of providing for the needs of their students. They were able to work it out that the instructor from the university taught those courses in their high school, so the students didn't have to go to the college campus. They were able to stay in their home high school and take those courses. Now, I know that may not be possible everywhere, and that was a good partnership between a high school and a university that they were closely affiliated with. But I thought it was a great way of helping provide for student needs, getting them ready for college, um, and not having to have them pay for a course when they entered as a freshman to get them ready to enter into their required freshman English or math course. It was all taken care of at the high school level through College Credit Plus in some ways. I don't know all the details of how they did it, but it was really successful for a lot of students. And I think those are the kind of partnerships that those of us in higher ed need to help formulate with some of our local high schools in order to be able to, provide for our students, particularly those with disabilities that might find themselves in those, what we call at Shawnee, those bridge courses. So. This is.
How much developmental work is being done now? How do you possibly add this into their current? I couldn't see all of that.
Oh, can you not see my screen here?
I can see that, but I was reading a question.
Oh, I'm
from
sorry.
chat. I'm sorry. I thought you could see that as well.
Much development work is being done now. How do you possibly do this in current curriculums?
Are you going to answer that, Charles? Because you saw the whole question.
I'll think through that while you're talking about that, and then I'll come back to it. How's that?
Okay, sure. So when considering a college, how do you weave self-advocacy skills, training experience with self-advocacy concerning disability needs to prepare for college classrooms on the campus? There's so many things to think about when you're considering a college or a university. If I were thinking, if I were in an IEP meeting and we were discussing a student with the family and where they were going to go, I would want, first and foremost, when I was considering all these questions, like, does the student or the parent need help with the FAFSA? Does the student or parent know about tutoring and student success? Are they first gen? How does the high school play a role in some of these scenarios? I would want to make sure that they felt comfortable in wherever that student wanted to go. Are they going to feel more comfortable at a huge university? Are they going to want to go to OSU? Or are they going to want to go to a small like Southern Ohio? Are they going to want to go? I mean, if the parents, we've all seen this. I mean, if you're in any kind of higher ed, if you've got a first gen student, a lot of the parents or families have no experience with FAFSA. They have no experience with navigating, even buying a textbook. So it's very important for them to have someone that's a mentor or an advisor that is very hands-on with them so that they're successful. We have the mentoring program at Shawnee, first gen professors who are mentors to first gen students. And sometimes it is the difference between them actually being successful and then dropping out after the first semester. So I think building those relationships, no matter where they go, no matter where they want to go, is essential. And that, I think, a high school having a relationship with a university or a community college would be a huge first step in building those relationships. If you had a high school that had a partnership, as Dr. Kemp was saying, if you had that relationship going and you had those ties and all of those things that were already set up, what a huge benefit that would be to any student that was wanting to go. You would already have the path well laid for them. So does the student need help understanding scholarship requirements, opportunities, and management of the scholarship? Does the student and parent understand that grants, loans, and the differences? Does the student have budget planning needs? And I would also add, do they also understand that if they do get a loan, it has to be paid back? I mean, I know that we have to go through being a parent and a lifetime student as well. You have to go through all those things online where you have to do the counseling and excuse me, you have to know that, this is what you're asking for. This is what's going to be paid back. This is your interest rate, yada, yada, yada. They need to know that if they have to get a loan, it has to be paid back and what that debt means to them. So it has to be communicated well. All these questions need to be asked and you have to be very, very positive that they understand that exactly what they're getting to. This question: are there currently liaison positions who deal with these special needs who go to the high school? I'm
So
not aware of any.
I can speak to one where familiar with a high school that the guidance counselor who's responsible for juniors and seniors has really close connections with the local universities that the students from that high school typically attend. So it would be Shawnee, it would be Southern State Community College, it would be the southern campus of Ohio University, particularly along the river here. And then, those partners share information back and forth. I know when I worked at a high school, we had the universities come in and sit down and speak with, talk with the parents, and what were some of the expectations, and what was that going to look like, and what were the steps, and give them kind of like little flow chart sheets to be able to help them through the steps. We all remember what that was like. Those of us that work in higher ed, it's so second nature to us now that we forget what that was like what's a FAFSA, and why do I have to fill that out, and why do you need my tax information, and how much I made last year, why is that any concern of yours, and all of those things. And if parents particularly don't have post-secondary education background, then they're unfamiliar with some of those things, and just helping them through that. So building partnerships, I think, from both the high school to the local universities and community colleges, that bridge goes both ways. I think I want to go back to the question asked earlier. Some of the developmental work being done. I know Shawnee is trying to work at developing a program. And I know Marietta College in our area is already doing this. They call it their Pioneer Pipeline. And it's trying to, they have a program developed for students with maybe more significant cognitive needs, to be able to get onto the college campus, be able to take courses like their peers are doing. So when they're getting ready to graduate from high school, they are entering into a non-degree program at the university level, like their peers are doing. So they're able to talk about, I'm going to college as well. I'm going to be in a program. I will see you there. I'm going to live in a dorm, those kinds of things. Kent State has been doing this for a number of years. Shawnee did a little bit of it, and then we got away from it, and we're trying to work at developing that kind of a program. Not all areas are like ours. We have a wonderful, we do have a great county board of DD framework to start in our area, and it is easier here. I do believe that. We're a little more community oriented and partner oriented. I think that plays well for our students with disabilities, very much so. And so creating opportunities. So I had a student that I've known the young man since he was 3 years old. Just before he turned 3, he lost his father to a massive heart attack. And right after he lost his father, his mother was informed that the young man had autism. He's now 20 some years old. I had him all through school, actually handed him his high school diploma, and saw the young man then move on to some non-degree coursework at Shawnee State University. And so when he spoke with his peers about what he was doing after high school, he could say the same kind of things that they were saying. I'm going to Shawnee in the fall as well. And, he took a guitar class, he took an art class, he took some other coursework, he took a sign class and learned some sign and those kinds of things. So he's had that rich experience interacting with peers his age. He works a part-time job. Currently, he still lives at home. That works well for him. But the transition plan that was developed for that young man made all of that possible as he exited high school. Um, and he received some support from other community partners. We have not talked about so far um, the office that's available to all of us, in Ohio anyway, the Ohioans, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, and the great work that they do as far as job coaching and really helping the family understand some of the roadblocks to where their student needs to go, and those kinds of things. So I agree with you. We have a great framework and support system in this area, and that really does help support our students who will soon be adults with disabilities, and work through that. So, this road less traveled for students with disabilities, it's maneuverable with supports. And I just want to, if you're working at the high school level and you're working with IEPs, to keep in mind that's a fluid document. It's a legal document that we're bound to, meet and those kinds of things. But if something isn't working for that student, then pull the team together and revise it, and then follow the plan and make sure that we're doing everything we can for these students. The sooner we start, the better. The later we start, often we don't see nearly the results that we could have seen had we started with planning earlier. I put this note in here: the power of one person who develops relationship with a student, speaking into them, you can do this, you're well prepared, you're going to make it, you can graduate from high school and college or the Career Technical Center as an adult in their program, or you can earn your trade certificate, I'm here to help you, those kinds of things. The power of one person speaking into the life of someone we know is so, so necessary. This road may not have been traveled by the parent. We've mentioned this a couple times. So provide extra support and direction so that the person who ensures progress towards college entrance happens. We we're seeing more students come into education that have disabilities, and those students, as they're preparing to be teachers, are so well suited to go back into the classroom and meet the needs of our children with disabilities because they lived it. It's a lived experience for them, and they know what some of the struggles are and some of the barriers. And so just as we close here, whatever we can do to help these children is what we want to be able to help from a university standpoint. How can we be community partners with you? And as alum of Ohio University, even Southern Campus, very proudly, when it was back in the day at the old Ironton High School, I know they stand ready to help their community partners as well, and what is helping with that, so that our students can be successful. So we've given you our contact information. We are happy to help if we can answer questions or whatever. And with that, we will take any questions or answers that you might be able to help us with that we're not aware of.
Are there any additional questions?
I have a comment. Going back to one of the questions about liaisons or to help with that transition, Ohio University has a program called Gateway to Success, and it was the earlier session they discussed it, but it's one of the resources that Ohio is trying to use to help navigate that transitional period and work within secondary ed to give them some of the tools and give the students tools and information about financial aid, like you discussed, and about maybe coursework and things that they can look at. So there are things in place. Each institution may do it differently, but I think we are all seeing that there's a need for this. So we're all working to bring something to help those students to navigate the system. And I want to say thank you. And I want to say this, that when you talked about what students need, you didn't talk about discouraging them from going into that program. You talked about finding those classes earlier in high school or middle school so they can start getting those skills to build up to getting to a biology class in college, or a calculus class in college. I love that you said that. I'm willing to share that.
One other thing too, wanted to point out, the program Essential Skills, that form, is that, did you say that was just being used in Souda County? Is that what?
I'm familiar with it because that's where I worked before Shawnee State, and we used those in our IEP meetings with our students who talked about wanting to go to the Career Technical Center. And so we would work down through that. They're available, but I just Googled them, Robert, and found them online.
Okay.
I had hard copies, but I needed links. And so I'm sure other career techs have something similar. But it was something that so it would they came about because the career tech was getting students who really weren't prepared, and they really didn't have the skills they needed to be able to complete the program and be successful in life. And the high school said, well, then tell us what they need, and we'll do what we can while they're with us through 10th grade to be able to help get them ready. And so there was that partnership that worked together. And so understanding, like with cosmetology, you've got to have a really good understanding of biology, for instance, and math as far as ratios and mixing and those kinds of things, fractions and all of that. You had to have that to be able to be successful. So then our math teachers at the high school really focused on making sure the students that were interested in career tech had that strong basis there to be able to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a form that if it's not being used, I think it should be used across the area. So yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions? I did include in the chat the evaluation link, so if you get a chance, please do complete that. Dr. McKenzie, any final thoughts or questions?
We are closing day one of our session, our 5th annual Envision Access. I'm really pleased. The 2 sessions today have been really enlightening. So hopefully tomorrow we'll continue this trend. Tomorrow, the first session starts at 9 a.m. You will get an email this afternoon, probably about 5-ish, with the links for tomorrow's sessions. I will also include the links for the session evaluations, just in case you don't get a chance to complete those during this time. So I want to thank Dr. Kemp and Dr. Cassidy for always being willing to come to the Southern campus and participate in this conference. One day we're going to have it so that you can have a 2-hour window where you can do this and then do the hands-on piece. That was supposed to be this year's plan. You're going to have this part and then you're going to do hands-on where you actually build an IEP. So one day we're going to make that happen.
We will. And Dr. McKenzie, thank you for inviting us. It's always good to partner with the Southern campus there at OU. I will send you via email the final presentation here, and you can share that as you feel.
Okay. It'll go on the Envision Access website with your session. It'll be session materials. So
great. Perfect.
Dr. Kemp, Dr. Cassidy, thank you both for being a part of this session. Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
pleasure.
All right.
All righty.
Great day.